Is acceptance a necessary prerequisite to awakening? Although we can't say it is directly a prerequisite, awakening to at least the state of witness consciousness, you'll see that acceptance is necessary. Although it may come about in various different ways. For most, our non-acceptance becomes so severe that it leads to such intense suffering. And if it's our time, the teaching of acceptance finds us, just like any of these teachings have arisen in your experience. You did not ask for them. You did not make them happen. They have come into your life. So I believe that intense suffering, intense non-acceptance leads to acceptance. You begin to see that you as the witness are prior to the preferences and resistances, the wants and not wants, the desires and fears. You begin to notice that the desires and fears, the strong identification with the preferences and resistances keeps you in the state of personhood, keeps you in the realm of personal identity. It keeps you bound and involved in the story as a character. It keeps you on the surface of life. It keeps you on the surface of the ocean, just in looking at the play of the waves, completely blind to the depth of the ocean. So yes, acceptance, although we can't say it's a prerequisite to awakening, we can say it is a natural phase which emerges, in which you begin to see the dysfunction in your own likes and dislikes, preferences and resistances, the uselessness in them. You see the bondage in your own preferences and resistances, not as a rejection or resistance to the preference or resistance, right? You begin to automatically see it from the place of the witness consciousness. The witness is free of any opinion on the preferences. You see, any opinion that arises is also witnessed. It's also just that same preference in motion, in momentum. At a certain point, acceptance is the only thing that makes true sense. It is you stepping out of your teeny tiny mental intelligence idea of I am the separate controller of my life, and stepping into the universal harmony, recognizing your place as the watcher, as the seer of this beautiful play, letting life flow into the various channels and giving it that freedom. Not that your non-acceptance didn't give it that freedom. It still had that freedom always, but now instead of suffering this flow of sensations, you are learning to rest in your place of identity, in your true place. And that itself is awakening, you see? So it's not that you do acceptance and then you're awakening as to the witness consciousness, or that you awaken to the witness consciousness and then you live in acceptance. This is a very mental way of looking at it, right? This first and then that first or then that, timeline. You have to transcend this way of looking at it. Being in acceptance right now, free from preference or resistance, or even if they arise, let them arise and recognize your place as the witness of them, free of them. Right then and there, that is you being as you are. And that right there is the dispersing of the cloud cover and the peace of your true nature automatically emerging. Even at the heart of your non-acceptance is a belief that it will bring you happiness, it will bring you peace. And it is delusion. In acceptance, this is seen. In acceptance, this understanding manifests itself. This wisdom cultivates. And the depth of the ocean, now you're receptive to. You're no longer just caught up in the waves, in the story, in the timeline. You're no longer just in concern of what's going to happen to this one, but rather you see this one also as just one part of the whole. And it's given that place to be the part of the whole, seeing that the part influences the whole and the whole influences the part, but it is no longer given that constant identification and belief out of which the self-concern, the selfishness arises, out of which the preferences and resistances arise. Acceptance here and now is a total dissolving of personal identity in this moment. So acceptance wakes you up from the state of personal identity, the state of what we call ego, which is not really a thing, you see? Ego is just the strong belief in the thoughts and sensations and feelings as myself. Ego is just the belief, the identification with the story, with the body. And that belief is automatically dispersing as you begin to recognize your place as the witness here and now of the preferences and resistances. Rather than fighting against your experience, rather than dwelling in the scenarios, rather than resisting, resting as you are, as the observing, as the seeing, as the watching. In observing, there's a great freedom that fighting, resisting, not accepting can never get you. So be very firm in this. Non-acceptance leads to further entanglement, further trauma, mental impressions, memory, and acceptance leads to disentanglement. Recognizing what is, seeing the nature of things, being that empty vessel through which this river of life is flowing through. It is a place of happiness. It is a place of peace. Happiness and acceptance are inseparable. Peace and acceptance are inseparable. They are not two. So yes, acceptance is a very crucial stage or phase or emergence aiding that awakening. But even that coming into your life, it's not like something you're influencing, like if you follow this teaching or don't follow this teaching, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. That's the funny part about it. It's not like you're doing acceptance to become awakened or whatever. That itself is a paradox. But if it's arising, all you can do is just practice it. That's as simple as that. Take that to be awakening. Free from the ideas of awakening, Free from this notion of where I am going to get to if I do acceptance. And that's why acceptance always starts as a practice, but ultimately it is just seen to be your nature. Acceptance is not something you're doing. It's just what you are. It's just your nature to allow, accept, right? You're not less aware of sadness than you are aware of happiness. The awareness of happiness and sadness is the same in degree, in quantity, in quality. Sadness and happiness are contents, right? They change. But the awareness of them, that is just natural. It is what you are. You don't make that happen. It doesn't fade. It doesn't go. So acceptance is you easing into your true nature. So I have a few resources on acceptance that you can also check out. I have my acceptance playlist in which I've put all my acceptance videos, which will give you a greater understanding of this teaching. And I also have my letting go masterclass, which in which you'll learn how to live in a state of harmony, in a state of acceptance. Again, it's like it starts off as a practice and we're calling it a state, but it's just what is. You're learning to ease into that rather than right now being in a contracted state. You're learning to come into your expansive knowing, witnessing, being. So I'll link those down below, and I'll also try to put this in somewhere in the end screen. Go take a look at that. I'll see you next time.